Let me share my desktop just because that'll be easy when people ask questions. Share. And then let me make sure I can actually see the chat. Okay. And then in theory, Emma and Bao should be on too, and they can also watch for things in the chat. So I guess, is there, I guess the easy first question is about watching the start of the presentation later. We usually post this to our YouTube channel, so you should see that when it gets posted. And then, you know, there was some chat going on about USB dongles on HP laptops. And the question was about USB-C adapters being the only ones that work for us. There were, you know, maybe this is something on the Windows side that comes up, you know, where you might try to use like an integrated NIC that's in a laptop, and you might find that it's very slow. And then there might be cases where you find that a USB dongle is reliably fast. That is sometimes, especially if you get a very new laptop, because perhaps our Linux, the kernel that we use and the drivers that we use are Linux-based, and it depends on community drivers to have that faster or proper driver support. And so, yeah, you might find that you know, you're best off with a USB adapter, and then you might find that the laptop uses a pass-through address that Tony talked about before. And the pass-through address, now you can put in that placeholder in that little field for the MAC address to make imaging with that easier. And there was some other chat about, you know, wanting to use serial numbers. And so everybody knows the reason that we use MAC addresses is because we PXE boot. And when you PXE boot, the MAC address is what's presented to the imaging server. So it all kind of ties together. And to move to serial numbers, which I saw a few people asking about, that would be something that we'd have to investigate. We've actually been doing a lot of investigation because of another related thing, secure boot, right? And the fact that secure boot and our imaging don't work together because of our Linux that we boot into. So, you know, as we look at this, there may be something down the road where maybe we can do serial numbers, where maybe secure boot can work, but we're still investigating.
The options we started the process to have our platform being validated for secure boot. So it's a long process because we have to build different pieces, which needs to be signed, validated. And then it takes a lot of time until we get the certificate and certification for that. So we started the process a couple of years ago. So we know how to do that, and we can just restart this. Now the other option is to get rid of Linux as basics for imaging. There are these days other options which were not available when we started imaging, I think 7 years ago, when we still had to support Windows XP. So yeah, we are investigating a lot of different options, and we will try to find the best way for that. But yeah, definitely Windows 11 with secure boot, with all these changes, yeah, makes it more pressuring than before.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, Windows PE perhaps is a path, but these are things we have to look into and make sure that it will be able to carry forward into the future. There was a question about, so first quarterly releases. So I don't know, Tony, do you want to speak to the release question in the chat?
Yeah, sure can. Hey Jeff, how you doing? Yeah, so we're going to beta now, but that's only a 2-week window for us. So it's not, we are about 2 weeks behind where we expect it to be, but I'd rather come out the door with something that we're happy with rather than something we're saying oops about. So yeah, so we're going to the beta now. We have 50 customers or so that are signed up in our beta program. We usually give them 2 weeks to test, and then we expect so 2 weeks from now is when we would expect the actual GM release. And I sure hope that we can eventually have enough people to not only, you know, I mean, to Vasily's point, he mentioned earlier that we're doing the quarterly releases, and we are. The more people we have, the more that we can get done in those windows. So there's a little bit of both of those, but then it also depends on what we see when we actually start testing, because that's really important to us, that we're not kind of rolling out something that we don't like it, or it needs to be tweaked, or it needs to be adjusted. And that's why we're behind here. The development and QA phases, you know, they build on each other. So that's where we are. And
I'm seeing here names I've seen for a couple of years already. I'm starting to be old employee at FileWave. I joined 2012, so it starts to be a long time. For those of you who have been with us, I'm not super proud of that time, but if you remember, we had sometimes versions which were released as early as possible. We wanted to have quickly the features in your hands, and we were not staffed enough on the QA side. So that means that on the development side, we are doing things very quickly. QA was very small, so they just tested if that was working, and then we released it. And I remember that some versions, we spent a lot of nights trying to help customers who dared installing the .0 version. So I hope that now you feel that the quality is getting better over the time, because now we have way more people in QA. They are way more painful for us as developers, because they test it, they report a lot of issues that we have to fix. Now the downside is that it takes a little bit longer than what we expected to get a release. So now we have to put the balance a bit back again on development. You've seen the product board, we have tons of different places we want to do things, so it takes a little bit longer. These 2 weeks, we feel that they are necessary to finish things properly. But yeah, the goal is really to release way more frequently than we used to do in the past years.
Okay. And then, were there any other questions?
in lieu of questions, maybe Josh, you want to give a little bit of info on the one of the things that I think where we're seeing a lot of movement and a lot of folks doing new and exciting things with FileWave is in using the APIs. Part of the output of the movement to a web admin is having to build APIs to do certain things. And because those APIs are built, it means they can be leveraged by things other than just the web API or just the web admin. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And before I do that, there was a quick question about the imaging Mac, and I don't actually know the answer off the top of my head, but I think you do. About the placeholder record for the MAC address?
Mac imaging was actually working exactly the same way as Windows imaging. So it was at the time when Apple allowed us to wipe a device and to run some tools that allows to completely recreate the partition. So this was
for the MAC address, the hardware address on the new placeholder, the new MAC address field that's in 14.6 for imaging for that virtual Mac. I know you can manually enter it, and I think, actually, Tony, I know that you can import it in the web admin, right? You can.
Yeah, when you import the list of placeholders with web admin, you can generate a CSV which contains additional fields, and then you can add the MAC address.
You can use that one in the web admin.
So either the web admin, or you can use the API, which is on top of web admin, to generate it with just a script or to do your own code for that.
Yeah, it's a hidden little treasure in the web admin. The CSV Import Tool is actually quite strong and easier to use than the one that's in native, and it allows you to kind of conditionally pick fields, and you do a mapping basically of you build a CSV however you want, and then in the import process you just map it to whatever the field is in FileWave. So and this is one of those fields, so you can mass import those virtual MAC addresses.
Okay, and then there were two things. Somebody wanted a recap of the Dell virtual Mac issue. So just quickly on that, it's not just Dell, it's just that we experienced it with Dell. Other manufacturers do the same thing. When you go to image a laptop that doesn't have a physical Ethernet port on it, and you go to attach a USB dongle, right? So the normal classic behavior would be the dongle has a MAC address, right? And that dongle, as it moves from machine to machine, keeps the same MAC address. And that can be problematic for, thinking that this MAC address belongs to this machine, because really it moves around everywhere. So what OEMs like Dell have done is when you connect that USB dongle, it doesn't use the MAC address of the dongle itself. The computer actually has a MAC address that it uses when using a USB dongle, so that my laptop has a MAC address and your laptop has a different MAC address. And so when you image, you would be able to image the machine and to know that this MAC address is truly for Josh's laptop. It's nothing to do with the dongle itself. And that's the virtual MAC address. The problem is that that virtual MAC address doesn't show up in an inventory. It is only active when it's being used. And that's why the MAC address field in FileWave does not actually have that virtual MAC address. And that's why we made that extra field that can be manually set. So hopefully that explains. And then, would it be true that 14.6 is required for macOS 12? Let me fix something. I want to show this one thing. Copy. Sorry. I just wanted to pull something and kind of talk about APIs for a second. So if you can see this one line, this was from a test that we did. Tony was mentioning that you can, anything you could do in the web admin, you could do in theory through APIs, right? So you can import data into the web admin, and Piana and Tony, you both said how, this was one of the good things you can do in the web admin. Well, when you import the data, and this was the thing I was looking for, it actually calls this command. And so you could make a script using the API to do an import to your server, and you don't even need shell access, like let's say you're a hosted FileWave customer, you don't have direct access to SSH into your server. You can use the API to be able to cause that import to happen. So if I was going to do a scheduled import of data, then I might look at APIs to do it. And yeah, so that would be my answer there. And I know this one line doesn't really fully explain it, but there is documentation here, and it's actually on every FileWave server. So just like there was a question about if somebody asked if they have the web admin, well, as long as you have, I believe through every version of 14, we've had the web admin. I think it started in the 13s, but it's definitely in the 14s. And the API stuff was in the 14 versions. So if I was to go to, I believe, I always get this backwards. Yeah, no, it's /API/doc. You can see all the different things you can do. And if you don't know anything about APIs, then just know that it's a way to call a URL, like a web address, and to either ask the server to do something or to ask for information from the server. And there's all these commands that are in here, and you can basically do anything the web admin does, more or less, through these APIs, and it's fully documented here. And for a lot of these, you can even, there'll be like a try it out. So when you expand one of these, it'll talk about the command or the field. And then there are sometimes things here where you could try it out. And as long as you're logged into web admin, then try it out will work because you're logged into the system. You know, someone can't just go to your server and run things. Don't worry that you can see this page. So I wanted to talk about that. Oh, and I guess either questions on APIs. So there was API imports require the file. So, okay, so the FileWave device ID, just to add to the question that appeared, right? You can get, so there's a couple of things. You can get the serial numbers for your devices by making a query. So in FileWave, and I actually have an example of this. So in FileWave, I think I have, yeah, I have this query called demo, and I can actually query this to get device IDs, and I could add serial number and figure that out. That's my trick to get that information. I don't know if there's other good tricks, but you can make an API call to query for information if you have like a saved query. And that's pretty easy. That's one line. And when doing custom field, does it impact the inventory last connected field? If you do custom field upload in the API, I don't think it affects the last connected fields. That's just importing data to update the fields. I don't believe so.
The last connected field is really when API, the client uses to update the data.
Right. This would be the same as if I manually in the console was going to do an edit, which wouldn't affect last connected either. So I believe the answer is no. It doesn't affect that. And device ID hash table query is the best solution then. I think so for that thing about a device ID dash hash table query to go from serial numbers to device IDs, but I didn't necessarily find the best way. That's just the way I do it. Now there's a lot of questions.
There was a question on when macOS 12 Monterey will be supported in FileWave.
And that was, we talked about that before the API things, I think, for a second. And did we say that macOS 12 is supported in 14.6?
Yes, 14.6, which we're expecting in about 2 weeks to release.
2 weeks.
Yeah, with the only thing is that we never know with Apple what will be the release candidate or what will be the result. So we will have to run still some tests as soon as we have the release candidate from Apple, and to make sure that everything is okay. I remember what one version of iOS, there was a difference between the most recent beta and the Golden Master that has been released a few days later. So until now, we are not supposed to say, and that's part of our agreement as well with Apple, that we support macOS Monterey. It's just beta, and it's still supported as a beta. So we will run tests, and that means that worst case, looking on wood, but worst case, we will have to release our 14.6 plus or 14.6.1 if the 14.6.0 is the first version to be out, which changes something. I hope it's not the case. In the past years, Apple seems to be more and more stable over time with the most recent betas, but yeah, so it's still a disclaimer. Yes, we plan to support it with 14.6, but until it's out and tested, we cannot guarantee that it works.
Okay. Let's see. There were MSI questions, right, that I kind of skipped past because I got on that API topic.
I think the community started to answer to each other, which is really great. Okay. But yeah, mostly MSI, the thing that most of the things we can do as FileWave client is to download the file from the server or from the booster and run MSI exec to install the MSI. So if the MSI is doing something different or breaking somehow, the only thing we can do is report the error we receive. So if the MSI is complicated enough and it does very weird things, sometimes it's, or even if we ask something to the end user, because we are running the MSI in the admin space, it may not work in that area. So if you have something which is completely headless and it asks the user to do something, then the MSI will just fail. So in that case, yeah, the best option is maybe to create your own file sets, or to add scripts before the MSI to set up everything, or to just embed the MSI into the file set and run yourself MSI exec with the right options. We just use the basics ones. It's the same for uninstalling application with an MSI. If the MSI allows to do the uninstall, there is a flag in registry. We will try to use it when we remove the file set association. But again, we just ask the system to do it, and we have limited access there, while when it's a plain file set, we can do everything. The last thing, which is better with a file set than with an MSI, is that the MSI is just one big box. It's there or it's not there, and that's it. With a file set, if one file is damaged or not downloaded or removed by your end user, FileWave client will be smart enough to just re-download that single file, and then you are saving some bandwidth. For the upgrade, that's the same thing. If you're upgrading from version 1 to version 2 and only a few files have changed, you will just download these 2 files which have changed. While if you have a big MSI, you will first download the big MSI again. I'm seeing questions about profiles on macOS. So we are going to the other side of the cross-platform. So a few things. There are 2 ways to install profiles on Mac. One is using the old user bin profiles command, which was the way to install profiles since macOS 10.5, I think, if I'm not wrong. And starting with macOS 10.9, we could install file set via MDM, profiles via MDM. Now there is moving from one options to one other was always a complicated part, because MDM can only manage profiles which have been installed by MDM. So there is no way, like you can do with applications, only recently on Mac, but on iOS it was already the case for a long time. There is no way MDM can take management, take ownership of an already installed profile, which means that if you have a FileWave instance or FileWave client which has installed the profile before the device was MDM enrolled, and then you MDM enroll the device, theoretically, what we could do is remove the profile from the profile command and reinstall it via MDM. This looks a good idea until you realize that you are removing the network profile and the certificate profile you need to connect to your Wi-Fi. And then if FileWave client is removing these 2 profiles and you are reinstalling them, you cannot reinstall them because you are not on the network anymore. So your device will be completely bricked. So we decided to be on the safe side here and store on the client how we install the profile. So if you install the profile once with the command line, we'll keep reinstalling the profile if you just upgrade the profile, or if you right click and do reinstall file set. The only way to go from profile to MDM command is to remove the association, wait for the profile to be removed, and install it again with a new association. We do that because we don't know is it very critical or not. Now, on top of that, macOS Big Sur introduces profile only via MDM. We cannot install profiles from the command line anymore. So what we decided to do is that we don't upgrade file sets anymore, because we cannot do that. You will have to remove the association manually and do it later with MDM. So it's a little bit tricky, but yeah, there are some limitations we have from Apple side. The best would have been that MDM protocol would allow us to take over profiles, but yeah, it's a limitation of the protocol. So in theory, when everything is completely MDM managed, it works okay. What doesn't work well is to migrate from the old protocol to the new protocol.
There was another good question earlier that I actually don't know the answer to, but it's not a technical question. It was about the sense of FileWave community. Now, we used to have an Alliance community where there was at least some activity, and it went away on a kind of FileWave website update. And I thought that marketing was going to put that back. I thought it was on there, but I don't know what the status is of that. Is there anybody on that can speak to that? Nina, can you speak to that at all?
Hello. I cannot speak on that right now, but that is not something that would be difficult to bring back. I will speak with Jolie and Rebecca about it, but as of now, that seems like something we could definitely bring back soon, because we're currently working on a few other website updates as well. So that will be something to add back.
It might be good for you to speak with Andreas as well in the EU, because he was doing some looking into things from that end. So it'd be good to talk with him about community.
Okay, yes, I will talk to him as well. We will add him to a meeting.
Quickly add to that as well. I know many of the customers should have gotten a pretty nice announcement from our customer experience team, as they are also working with marketing and the other teams to ensure that our customers are getting the communications and have a little bit more of a precise area to go to for customer communications information as things are released. So I believe Mary is on, but I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the overall feel of community. So I'm not sure, Mary, if you wanted to kind of fill that in. I know you've been sending out, your team's been sending out that information to customers.
Yep, that's correct. We are working on that with the marketing team.
Okay. Were some things getting answered in chat?
The Foundry question is a good question. We had that same question this morning, so we hear you loud and clear. That has been a casualty of my expanded role here at FileWave, is a lack of time to be able to make updated content. So we're going to go to more of a expanded role with this, and we're going to have a lot of people contributing content to the Foundry site. We've been trying to reach critical mass with functions that are in the web and in the native, but I think it's about time we pulled the trigger on that. Yes. So soon you'll hear some other voices other than just mine on the Foundry, which I'm sure will be to much applause.
See, I think this went till 12:15, if I remember correctly, and then I think then Tobias comes back.
So I am back, but I think we can go a little longer. So I had in my calendar, 12:30. So
oh, was it 12:30? Oh, okay. And I am good to go longer if, let's see, I'd like to pull together a group of users who would like, oh, that was Jonathan Kane. Yeah, so if anybody sees in the chat that Jonathan Kane is looking for folks for like an API kind of like a customer group to talk about using the API. And I know from when I've chatted with Jonathan about it was, whether you know a ton about APIs or you know nothing, maybe you want to know something. He put an email address there in the chat if you want to get involved. Yeah, and he says we'll rope in Josh too.
Well, and I'll just comment on that. The APIs in particular, I think, are super, super fun because you can be so creative with them. There's no artificial construct. When we put some feature together, right? So say, for instance, when we talked about TeamViewer and adding licenses to TeamViewer, we build the structure for that. But it's a little bit of an artificial structure. We choose which options we're going to show, which things we don't show, etc. The beauty of the APIs is you can use them however you see fit, right? So if there's a function that sends a reboot command to an iOS device, you can just take that API and build all your own logic around it to have it behave exactly how you want. I don't think, did I mention that in this call or was it this morning? I don't think I did, but we had
I think it was this morning.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it in this morning's call, but we had a prospect that you know, wanted a situation, and I know Avery is out there. I think he worked with Josh on this, but they wanted they leased basically iPads, and that if and from their billing system, and that's a perfect way.
Your audio cut out there.
Oh, sorry, you hear me now?
Just repeat the story of what they wanted to do.
Yeah, so they basically leased iPads, and they wanted to have it so that if the customer didn't pay their bill, that they could send a wipe command to that device. So they take away the functionality of the device from the end user, and that's a perfect use for the API because there's a command in the web admin to be able to do the wipe, and all you have to do is then call that from your billing system. So you might pass over, say, a serial number or whatever it is that you pass over. But that wipe command that you see right there, if you cheat just a little bit and look at what the browser is doing behind the scenes, you'll see exactly what it's doing and how it's calling. So if you use an auth token like what Josh accidentally showed before that he needs to reset after this call.
That's already done.
Then you're going to see the command that goes to that device, and you can see exactly how it's used. And when you couple that together with the FileWave API documentation, you get both a really good example, and in the API, in that Swagger document there, you can actually test the commands. Right? So in this case, you can actually see the command, as Josh has shown you here, that it sent this comment. You can see what it sent specifically, what verb it called, you know, what type of, in this case, I suspect it's a post or a patch method to FileWave, and what URL did it call, where that device is 6296. And that is the ID, and you'll notice that when if you click on that device in the web admin, you'll see that when you look at the URL for that device, you see that in the URL it's 6296. That's the device ID, the client ID, and it's also in the address window too. So it passed over the device ID so that you could take a particular action. What did it send? It sent to the comment field whatever that was that Josh typed in. Right? So you can totally 100% cheat and be super creative with any kind of workflows that you want to build. We've done some very interesting stuff with this recently.
Yeah, and if you look at this devices command, that's where also you can go here and look for. See, this is the URL, just like this is the URL, FileWave devices. So I might look for that to see like what can I do with this? What data can I get? So everything in this Swagger document is all kind of like the documented supported things. But, when you do this, you will find that you find ways to accomplish things that are not listed in that Swagger document. And the only thing I'd say is if you do something and the request URL says something like internal in the list, then it's not necessarily a published API, and it could break from version to version. So you would just want to be cognizant of that. If you do the same trick I do to figure out how it works and then make a script, you might want to double check whether that's a documented function over here, because we hopefully shouldn't break documented functions between versions.
But we'll gladly break the undocumented one. So basically,
yes. Yeah.
all it means is it's not documented. It means it's not quite set in stone yet. So you probably don't want to build any any processes on it, that are mission critical. And of course, like with anything else, when you're doing anything with the API, of course you could do damage. So be very, very careful in what things you're testing, and start small. And hey, how do I change this custom field for this one device, and start with that kind of thing, like the thing that Josh is showing there, that bulk delete. That might be a little bit dangerous. But if you're in a situation where that's exactly what you want to do, right? You just want to be very careful with it. Always good, especially if you want to stand up a sandbox server, just install FileWave Server with no license key. You get 5 devices that you can manage on each of the platforms. So you can do a whole lot in a dev environment. It's safer than production.
Yeah. And I guess the API question I see at the bottom there about a Postman project with API calls in it. I don't think anybody has
That's really
that.
that's really what this Swagger document is. So
Yeah.
if you go, it's an automated system that builds this out for you. And in fact, when you go to particular ones, you can actually do the calls in here. So that's actually the purpose of this document. So on your server/API/doc will get you to that same place. And no, we did not discuss any new features of computer imaging with PixieBoot. We had that change to be able to account for the virtual NICs. But this area, Windows imaging, is one we're glad to have Dennis on board, and I'm sure PN's glad to have Dennis on board, because eventually that Windows imaging work will move over to the Windows specific team. But this is something that we're really thinking that we might just need to reinvent entirely. Not the concepts behind it, but we may very well need to move away from the Linux backbone for booting it, because that's where we see the issues, where we don't have drivers or there's new storage types that aren't well supported on the Linux side. And of course, a Windows PE or Windows environment would be, because it's the destination of the original OS. So we're thinking very much about that, but it's not in our plans in the immediate future. Hopefully after immediate, though.
Okay. Any other things? Anything we missed that somebody wrote in the chat that we didn't see and we didn't answer?
There's always something that somebody's noticed they could do in the last couple of weeks that they never knew they could do before. Anybody have something like that?
There was one more TeamViewer question. I believe that would be unattended access. Right?
Yeah, unattended access is the piece that we're working on for 14.7. In this first iteration, in kind of the technical preview, it is attended access only.
Yeah, but if I may, I think the question was without them knowing. I don't know if that's going to be possible. I think they will know. It's just they don't have to
because
confirm.
TeamViewer will spawn, right? So
TeamViewer
as opposed
will probably
to
inform.
Observe client might be more not as visible that it's occurring.
So we have to check it, but at the moment I don't think hidden will be available. We have to check.
So Matteo said yes. I think that was what he said. Yep, it's all good. No, I'm teasing. Yeah, I guess I was thinking of the question in a different way, but they just didn't have to confirm the remote session. But yeah, I guess it's two different things.
Yes, correct. They will not have to confirm, but I think there will be like a small icon bottom right, like your device is being managed. It's been modified. It's been, how do you say it? Yeah, it's been remote controlled. So, yeah.
On the licensing question, that does have to be through us because it's a particular contract that we have with TeamViewer. And I can't speak right now to the cost on that, Jeff. That's still being discussed, but reasonable. I'll say that word again.
$350. It's a good price. I mean, I think on that question is either, right? Logged into web admin or native.
Yeah, that's the place that you create the session. So basically the admin, either admin will do the session creation call, which really goes to a new service of ours called RCS, or Remote Control Service. I think, wasn't that your abbreviation for that, Matteo?
Well, I don't think there is any abbreviation, but yeah, the license, so the admin will need a TV license, then they will be generating a link, and then the link can go to whatever you want. So there would actually be the possibility to copy paste the link and send it manually. That can be used, for example, in case you're having trouble onboarding a device, then the device is not even in FileWave, or if, for example, we mentioned we are still leveraging our ZMQ, if the ZMQ for whatever reason is having issues, you can still send the link through alternative methods. Again, it's a backup plan, but
yeah, I totally forgot to cover that, Matteo, earlier. Josh, can you show that real quick in your web admin, the TeamViewer link that's in the header? The double arrow guy up there beside the model number.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why I was looking to pick a device, but this would be. It should say I have a license.
This is why we don't do these things live.
maybe my lab doesn't have a license anymore.
Yeah. So what that does, though, is it gives you a link and a link that you can send to the remote machine through, say, email or text or whatever that you can send to the remote person. So maybe if the FileWave stuff isn't working right, you can send it to them so you can initiate the session from without FileWave. Maybe the FileWave client's broken or something like that, and you actually want to fix it. Then you can use that to send the link and let the user start it.
And then there was another question about the permissions for TeamViewer to work on a Mac. So that would need a TCC profile, right?
It does, yeah, in the TeamViewer app. And the comment about those that were authorized before, it was on a different server. That was on my server, and here we're on Josh's. But who knows what's going on in the background? But
yeah,
I think that's the cause.
Oh, and the TeamViewer quick support, is it locked to only allow connections from the same org?
Not really, but the link is. So we are generating this link. The user will have to click it, and then this link, let's say, replace all of the communicating, the access code, the password. Everything is done through this link. So whoever gets this link will be able to access it. Obviously, to generate this link, you need to be in FileWave. So these links will only be generated by FileWave for FileWave users. So, but yes, for example, if you would have a standard host, you can still use TeamViewer normally by telling your IDs to people. Obviously, that is not blocked by default. There are possibilities to customize the TeamViewer installer, but for the very first, as we said, it's a tech preview. We are not looking into that right now, but that's definitely very valid feedback that we can then take it offline and discuss.
And an API to create TVR links. I would imagine they could do, we won't necessarily have it directly documented, but you could do it by figuring out the call here, right? Or will there be an official documented way to?
There's an API that you can call to generate the links and to actually also send the link directly to the device. Now I'm not sure if this is a public API. I would have to check that one, but in theory it can be used.
In theory, somebody could use my trick to figure out the internal API at first.
The reason why we are cautious in making that public is also because, as you can imagine, there are multiple moving pieces that we need to make sure they are all correct, in the right version, and so on.
Yeah. The question about no user intervention to control a machine, that's the part in probably 14.7 where we're trying to do unattended access.
Yeah, we are working on that. We are starting to work on that right now.
Hey, Josh, Greg had a good comment there. Obviously now with
the K-12 one.
Yeah, we have the ability to obviously take away permissions from selective admins. Will that be the same situation to where they can remove that remote access from certain FileWave admins?
Well, actually, so the TeamViewer access has to be explicitly given to an admin, right? And then consumes a license. If I go here to manage
That's correct.
administration.
And in the next release, there'll be additional controls on top of this that define whether or not you can do attended versus unattended access to a particular device. So there's a few additional permission controls that are going to be in there. But nobody gets it by default. So yes, you can absolutely control who has the ability to do it. And I think to kind of stay on schedule here, we probably need to hand it back over to Tobias. We're really thankful for everybody for joining and all of the good questions. And we really do actually look forward to doing these things each time. So we hope to get 14.6 out to you here real soon. Tobias, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Can somebody give me screen sharing permission? Just want to bring up the agenda again to remind everyone.
Are you sure you're authorized to be able to do that?
Yeah, well, I'm not currently. So I'm asking, I think John
Yeah,
can.
I think Jonathan has the control of that.
Okay, now it works. Thank you. Okay. Can you guys see the presentation?
Yes, we can do.
This always gets a bit confusing with my monitor. Okay, so yeah, I think I just want to, along Tony's comment, I think this, I wasn't able to attend the whole thing because I had some interviews, but I really felt like there were some, some pretty deep discussions going on technically. I really hope you got quite some value out of the preview of what's coming with this release and out of this discussion around, the questions that are moving you. I really, is really excited to meet many of you in the next couple of months. And yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this again. So I think with that, maybe quick reminder that we're doing this giveaway. If you follow us on LinkedIn
I'm sorry, we saw your presentation before, but I'm only seeing a white screen now. There we go.
Okay, let me just unplug my screen. Sorry about this. It always messes a little bit. So can you see it now?
We sure can.
Okay, very good. Sorry about that. Yeah, so as I said, if you follow us on LinkedIn, we'll post a couple of questions there. And if you get them correct, then you can win a gift card. And you will also get some, some news about FileWave along the way. And I think with that, let's look at the agenda real quick. So this is kind of the end of the main part, right, where we focus on the core product. But I think after lunch, there is a session that is, given that we have many education customers in the US, I think there's a very exciting bonus session on class basis. And Julian, Irma, and Vasily will kind of give a demo on where this current MVP sits. And I think that's a very exciting session to look forward to after lunch. So, enjoy your lunch. It was great to see you and talk to you, and hopefully I'll get to know many of you personally eventually. So with that, have a great lunch, and then hope to see many of you at the class basis session later on. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.